Thanks, Bob. Now, I might need to just... Somewhere there's a presentation in here. Okay, so the role that I have in this session is to provide an overview of the Australian forest estate, and I'll be going through the resource base, describing the challenges and opportunities very briefly. I think that'll come through more with some of the other speakers. But importantly, I wanted to close with a very key message about the importance of current, comprehensive and accurate information to demonstrate sustainable forest management to domestic and international audiences and to support competitive and profitable forest industries. And in many ways, this helps us to gain the social licence that is needed for operating in Australia's forests. So Australia's forests, they're extensive geographically and climatically diverse and well loved by Australians, both those who use them for their range of values and those who love the fact that they exist but don't necessarily go anywhere near them. The management and utilisation of forests has been a topic of debate on and off for many years, but throughout all the challenges, the Australian forest industry has remained a vital, resilient, adaptive and successful participant in the Australian economy, and especially so in regional economies. And underpinning Australia's ability to demonstrate sustainable forest management, both domestically and internationally, is our capacity to report comprehensively across the wide range of social, biophysical and economic values of forests. So much of my presentation is based on the information provided by governments and industry for national reporting purposes, including Australia's 5-yearly State of the Forest report that we're currently preparing at the moment for release in 2013. So just quickly, we have 147 million hectares of forests. This slide, I just wanted to be able to bring some focus to where a lot of the debate has been, the open forests that are highlighted here in green. We have woodland forests in beige, and then in the red is the much smaller proportion of closed forests. It's the tenure that helps us to understand how Australia's forests are managed, and indeed 70% of Australia's forests are privately managed, either as leasehold forests, largely used for grazing, although some timber production, and private tenure, which includes Indigenous forest management managed for conservation purposes such as kakadu. So privately managed forests represents the greatest gap in our knowledge about Australia's forests, and especially on the management and harvesting activities taking place. And of the remaining 30% of publicly managed forests, half of these, 23 million, are managed as nature conservation reserves, and a further 9 million hectares are what are referred to as our state forests, the multiple use forests. The slide that I'm showing here just gives a bit of a breakdown across the main timber producing states to give an indication of the proportion of reserves, conservation reserves, to those forests managed for timber production. But indeed, of those forests managed for timber production, it's a much smaller area again that's actually available for utilisation once codes of practice and suitability are taken into account. And the figures that we've just seen sit on the back of a history of decline in the area of multiple use native forest available for timber, with a corresponding increase in the area of national parks. So on to the plantation areas. Data from the National Plantation Inventory shows the area of softwood plantations increased marginally during the past decade to just over 1 million hectares. The next comprehensive spatial update of the National Plantation Inventory is being finalised and due for release within the next few weeks. The area of hardwood plantation increased by nearly 5 times from 1995 to 2009, largely due to the increased private investment through managed investment schemes. But due to a number of factors, including the lower than expected productivity and return on investment, along with a drop in market demand, advice from growers participating in the current update of the National Plantation Inventory indicates that the total area of hardwood plantation is likely to decline, and this is to be confirmed as we go and continue to produce our report. In terms of the harvest activities, we'll focus first on the hardwood pulp from both native and then from hardwood plantations. The volume of native forest pulp logs harvested has nearly halved in the past 5 years, and predominantly in the past 2 years, in favour of hardwood plantation pulpwood, which has seen a steady increase in the volumes harvested. And indeed, for the first time in ABARES figures, the volume of pulpwood from hardwood plantations exceeded that from native forests. The increase in availability of this product type corresponds to the planting rates of hardwood plantations during the 1990s and 2000s, with that resource now coming online. But to put some focus then on the sawlog harvest activities, in line with the overall decline in access to publicly managed native forests, the supply of native sawlogs has steadily declined since the mid-1990s, although the most recent figures show a slowing in that rate of decline. And less than 10%, somewhere between 5 and 10% of plantations are managed for sawlog production. The current supply of hardwood plantation sawlogs is tiny and will not increase much more for a decade or more. And if and when it does reach significant levels, most of the wood will be suitable for structural grade only. It will not provide a substitute for appearance grade products from native forest and is unlikely to be available in sufficient supply to substitute the current native sawlog volumes. And to complete the picture, the sawlog estate, Australia's softwood plantations are managed primarily to produce saw and veneer logs on a 30 to 35 year rotation, with up to 3 thinnings that produce pulp, posts and sawn timber. And over the last 10 years, Australia's softwood log harvest has increased from around 11 million cubic metres to 14.5 million cubic metres per annum. The increase in production of softwood log harvest aligns with the increased plantings through the 70s and 80s. The most recent forecast plantation log supply figures from the National Plantation Inventory, which were prepared back in 2006, shows a progressive increase in hardwood pulpwood corresponding with the trend in the establishment of the hardwood plantations, with a small increase forecast in the volume of hardwood sawlogs over the projection period. The softwood plantation log supply is forecast to increase very little in the next few decades. ABARES' forecast plantation log supply is a highly valued product used by industry and government alike for a range of analyses, including consumption and trade. Industry has a key role in ensuring the forecast supply figures are as robust and close as accurate as possible by making available the best information for the development of the forecasts. The projected figures are very much dependent on the clear direction and advice provided by industry. So preparation for the next set of plantation forecast figures by ABARES will begin later this year once the spatial update of the National Plantation Inventory is completed. Different challenges are associated with the hardwood and softwood plantation sectors. While the hardwood plantation sector has a considerable increase in wood availability on the horizon, the outlook for wood availability for the softwood sector is very much couched in a different context, with little expected increase in wood availability until at least 2025 to 2030. Recent history, however, gives us some guide to the future, with the gap between softwood timber production and consumption closing off the back of the previous expansion of plantation resources. And over the last 10 years, Australia's softwood sawn timber output, as the major product produced from that resource, has increased from 2.3 million cubic metres 10 years ago, from a log harvest of around 11 million cubic metres, to an average of 4 million cubic metres per annum, from a log harvest of 14.5 million cubic metres per annum. And the average recovery of sawn timber per cubic metre of harvested logs over this period has therefore increased from around 21% to 28%, indicating important efficiency gains in the growing and processing of softwood logs, plus an expansion of market opportunities over this period. And over this period, the softwood sawn timber trade picture has been changing. Imports have been trending downwards, with a strong growth in Australia's export volumes. And the increase in Australian exports provides an important avenue for selling the lower grades of sawnwood timber products, noting an average price for Australia's softwood sawn timber exports of around $245 per cubic metre, compared to the average price for imports of $515 per cubic metre in 2009-10. So given this context, further direction is needed for industry on how they expect to respond to limited growth in wood availability over the next 20 years, whether the recovery rates will continue to rise, and how they expect Australia's import and export trends to change given the Asia-Pacific industry outlook provided by Dr. David Cunningham earlier today. I'll just briefly outline the challenges and the opportunities. The challenges include resource access. both to public and private native forests and to productive land for plantations, changes to productivity resulting from climate change and competing products from outside the sector. Opportunities for consideration include increasing domestic demand for structural products, innovation, silvicultural adjustments, including reduced rotation lengths, and that again builds on the presentation that Michael gave us this morning too. And a question remains about the private native resource. Is this an opportunity for industry? So to wrap up, the area of publicly managed native forest available for timber production is finite, and recent trends suggest a continuing decline in access to that resource, notwithstanding the higher proportion of publicly managed conservation reserves. The softwood plantation resource has largely plateaued with limited opportunity for expansion of its current land base. The substantial expansion in hardwood plantations over the past 15 years is expected to ease, with industry advice indicating a likely decline in the next few years in planting rates. The current hardwood plantation resource is managed predominantly for pulpwood, with an export market focus at the moment, with less than 10% produced as sawlogs. So in closing, I want to reiterate my keen message about the importance of current, comprehensive and accurate information from all sectors of the forest management and forest industry community, including future directions, is fundamental for our reporting obligations, but importantly, to be able to demonstrate sustainable forest management to our stakeholders and to support the ongoing development and maintenance of competitive and profitable industries in Australia. Thank you.